You want your own son. Damn, get off of here. We don't give a fuck about y'all dumbasses. You or your slow ass. Get off. You see what?
Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
They some weirdos.
The link is in her bio. The link is in my bio.
You want your own son. Stunna Girl bending that ass over for my son right now, ho. Stunna Girl over there. Back. You mad, ho? You mad. You real mad. You so mad. Stunna Girl over there like,
Hold up. Pause everything you're doing because the internet just caught Blueface in a plot twist so disrespectful it feels scripted by a petty producer with a grudge. 1 minute. Fans are still arguing timelines, loyalty, and unfinished chapters. The next minute, Stunna Girl is in the kitchen cooking like this man already signed a long-term lease on peace. And if that wasn't loud enough, Karlissa allegedly slid in with shades so casual it felt like she already read the ending of this story weeks ago. This wasn't a breakup announcement. This wasn't the clarification post. This was a visual statement, the kind that says, "The show moved on without you." While the audience is still clapping for the last scene, and let's be honest, this makes the Cardigans look under-rehearsed because cooking isn't chaotic. Cooking isn't messy. Cooking is domestic, calm, and dangerously final. It's the universal sign of "I'm comfortable here." And that's exactly why Chrisean fans went into full meltdown mode, not because of hate, but because of realization. Carlos's alleged reaction only made it worse. No sympathy, no soft landing, just energy that screamed. He done moved on without even needing to say it. And that's when the internet knew this wasn't tea. This was closure served hot, unrequested, and impossible to ignore. To understand why this moment detonated the internet the way it did, you have to understand that Blueface and Chrisean Rock were never just a couple. They were a franchise. Their relationship became a serialized drama where every argument was an episode. Every breakup was a cliffhanger, and every reunion felt like a season renewal nobody officially approved, but everyone still watched. Fans didn't just observe their chaos, they invested in it emotionally, defended it aggressively, and turned it into a full-time spectator sport. So when the narrative suddenly shifted without warning, the shock didn't come from jealousy alone, it came from betrayal of expectation. For months, the public had been conditioned to believe that no matter how ugly things got, no matter how loud the fights or how final the breakup sounded, the storyline would always circle back. That's how the pattern worked. Disorder followed by reconciliation, silence followed by explosions, a never-ending loop that fans learned to predict. And that's why this moment felt different, because there was no noise, no meltdown, no cryptic rant, just visuals that quietly rewrote the script. When Stunna appeared cooking for Blueface, it wasn't flashy or confrontational. It wasn't aggressive, and that's what made it lethal. Cooking isn't a flex meant for the internet hits, a signal meant for real life. It suggests comfort, routine, and access. It says, "I'm here when the cameras aren't." And that detail is what flipped the switch in people's minds. Chaos can be temporary. Comfort implies longevity. Immediately, fans scrambled to explain it away. Some insisted it was staged. Others said it was bait. A few argued it was just content. But denial only lasts so long when the visuals don't support the fantasy, because nothing about the moment felt rushed or forced. There was no urgency, no performative energy. It looked normal. And normal was the scariest part of all. Then came Karlissa. And if you followed this saga long enough, you know her presence is never neutral, allegedly shading Chrisean fans. Her tone didn't come across as defensive or apologetic. It came across as finished, like someone watching an argument they already moved past. That energy alone shifted the entire conversation. Because when the family stops acting stressed, it signals a change in reality. Fans took that alleged shade personally, and not without reason. They had spent months writing for a narrative that suddenly looked unsupported by the people closest to the situation. And when supporters feel abandoned, outrage turns inward. Suddenly, people weren't just mad at Blueface or Stunna Girl. They were questioning whether they had been manipulated by the storyline itself. The background made it worse. Blueface and Chrisean's history was messy, loud, and public to an extreme degree. Every low moment was documented. Every reconciliation was broadcast. So the idea that he could move on quietly felt offensive to those who believed they were owed a front-row seat to TH ending. But relationships don't operate on audience approval. And that realization hit hard. The internet thrives on noise. But this situation thrived on silence. No explanations, no confirmations, just vibes strong enough to drown out speculation. And silence in this case acted like confirmation without paperwork. It allowed people to project their own conclusions. And most of those conclusions weren't generous. What really escalated the tension was how fast the tone changed online. At first, it was disbelief. Then it turned into anger. Then it shifted into resignation. That emotional progression happened within hours, not days, which tells you how fragile the narrative already was. This wasn't a stable storyline that cracked hit was a brittle illusion that shattered the moment reality touched it. Karliss's alleged reaction added salt because it reframed the power dynamic. Fans realized they weren't part of the inner circle. They were consumers of content, not participants in decisions. And once that realization settles in, loyalty starts to feel one-sided. That's when support turns into criticism. Another layer that fueled the controversy was how effortless the moment looked. There was no desperation, no rebound energy, no chaos. It didn't scream, "I'm trying to prove something." It whispered, "I've already moved on." And whispers travel faster than screams when people are already listening closely. People started revisiting old moments with new eyes. Clips that once looked romantic now felt transactional. Arguments that once seemed dramatic now felt exhausting. The past was being reinterpreted in real time, and that reinterpretation hurt more than any direct insult could, because it suggested the story might have ended long before the audience realized it. The first reactions weren't just emotional, they were defensive. Fans weren't ready to let go of the narrative they helped sustain. And that's the dangerous part of parasocial investment. When the ending doesn't align with the version you supported, it feels personal. Not just disappointing, but disrespectful. By the end of this phase, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't about Stunna Girl cooking or Karlissa shading. It was about control of the narrative slipping away from the audience. And once that control is gone, the outrage isn't about love or loyalty anymore. It's about losing the illusion that you ever had a say in how the story ends. Once the initial shock wore off, the internet did what it always does best. It escalated. The moment stopped being about one video, one meal, or one alleged shade-filled reaction and turned into a full-blown cultural event. Timelines transformed into courtrooms. Comment sections became battlegrounds, and everyone suddenly held a PhD in relationship analysis. The scandal evolved from confusion into performance, and the audience wasn't just watching anymore. They were participating. Memes detonated first. Within hours, Blueface was being framed as a man who found peace after the storm, while Chrisean fans were cast as passengers standing on a platform waving at a train that had already left the station. Savage edits popped up showing cooking clips contrasted with old chaotic Leah streams. Like a before and after ad for emotional stability, humor became the weapon of choice. Because jokes soften uncomfortable truths, laughing was easier than admitting. The storyline might actually be over. Then came the commentary accounts, the ones that speak in confident tones and rarely apologize. They didn't ask whether Blueface moved on, and they declared it. In internet culture, certainty matters more than accuracy. And once enough people repeat the same narrative, it becomes accepted reality. The phrase "he done moved on" wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a slogan, a catchphrase, a verdict stamped by public consensus. Karliss's alleged shading took on a life of its own. During this phase, people weren't just reacting to what she said, They were reacting to what her energy implied. The lack of concern, the absence of hesitation, the casual confidence, it all suggested that this transition wasn't sudden. It felt planned, or at least expected, and nothing infuriates fans more than realizing they might be late to a party. Everyone else already attended. Celebrity reactions, even indirect ones, poured gasoline on the fire. A like here, a repost there, a laughing emoji in the wrong place at the wrong time. Suddenly, everything meant something. In the digital world, silence is interpreted as strategy and engagement is seen as endorsement. So when familiar names interacted with the discourse, it validated the idea that this was bigger than a random moment. It was trending because it mattered. Pop culture comparisons went nuclear. People compared the situation to a season finale where the writers didn't warn the audience before killing off a main character. Others joked it felt like watching someone replace chaos with K the way an artist switches genres after a scandal. One viral post said this saga deserved an Emmy for Best Unannounced Ending. The exaggeration wasn't just funny. It reflected emotional whiplash. As outrage simmered, the internet split into camps. One side accused Blueface of disrespect and insensitivity, arguing that moving quietly after such a public relationship was unfair. The other side praised the shift, framing it as growth, maturity, and finally choosing peace. Neither side was really arguing about him. They were arguing about what the relationship symbolized to them. And then there was Stunna Girl positioned fairly or unfairly as the calm presence in the room. The contrast became impossible to ignore. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't responding. She wasn't explaining. She was just existing comfortably. That alone rewrote the power dynamics of the entire situation. Because nothing threatens emotional investment like someone who appears unbothered. What made this phase dangerous was repetition not of phrases, but of visuals. The more people shared clips, the more normalized the image became. Shock fades. When exposure increases, what once felt impossible slowly started to feel inevitable, and inevitability is the final stage of acceptance. Outrage morphed into commentary. Commentary turned into fatigue. People stopped asking questions and started making statements. The narrative hardened. Blueface wasn't possibly moving on. He had moved on. Karlissa wasn't maybe shading. She had chosen her stance. And Chrisean fans weren't just disappointed, they were grappling with the realization that the saga might no longer revolve around them. The internet loves chaos, but it loves closure even more when it can frame it as victory. And in this phase, the victory wasn't emotional. It was narrative. Whoever controlled the story won. And at that moment, the story wasn't being told by captions or interviews. It was being told by silence, routine, and the calm repetition of everyday moments. By the end of this escalation, the scandal had outgrown the people involved. It became a case study in how quickly public perception can pivot when comfort replaces chaos. And once the audience senses stability, no amount of nostalgia can resurrect the old storyline. The drama didn't disappear, it evolved. And that evolution made one thing painfully clear. The internet wasn't watching a breakup anymore. It was watching a reset. After the memes slowed down and the comment section stopped refreshing every second, the real damage began to surface. Because scandals don't end when the noise fades, they end when perception hardens. And in this case, perception didn't just shift, it locked in. The aftermath wasn't explosive. It was quiet, surgical, and far more dangerous for everyone involved. That's when people realized this wasn't a temporary storm. This was a climate change. Blueface's public image underwent a strange transformation almost overnight. For years, he had been branded as chaotic, reactive, and addicted to volatility. Suddenly, the narrative pivoted. The same man was now being described as calm, reserved, and intentionally low energy. Not because he gave a speech or showed growth in an interview, but because he didn't react at all. Silence became his rebrand, and in internet culture, restraint is often mistaken for maturity. Karlissa's role in the aftermath became even more polarizing. To some, she looked like a mother standing 10 toes down, unbothered and unapologetic. To others, she appeared dismissive, almost celebratory, as if she had been waiting for this moment to arrive. That perception split audiences cleanly down the middle. But regardless of where people landed, one thing was undeniable. Her energy signaled finality, and finality makes fans uncomfortable when they're not ready to let go. For Chrisean, the consequences were more complicated. Her name didn't stop trending, but the tone changed. It shifted from fiery defense to quiet concern, from hype to exhaustion. People still cared, but they cared differently. Sympathy mingled with frustration, and that mix is never stable. Once fans start questioning whether chaos is being recycled instead of resolved, loyalty begins to erode. What truly reshaped the public mood was the realization that the relationship might have ended long before the internet noticed. The cooking moment wasn't the beginning, it was the reveal. And nobody likes finding out there behind the timeline. That realization forced people to reevaluate everything they thought they understood about the saga. Old moments were reinterpreted. Old arguments felt heavier. Old defenses felt misplaced. The power dynamic had changed permanently. The audience no longer felt like insiders. They felt like spectators who missed a private decision. And when parasocial access disappears, resentment often follows. Not always lead resentment, but quiet disengagement, the kind that slowly drains attention, clicks, and emotional investment. The relationship itself stopped being the focus. Instead, the conversation turned into a broader discussion about public love, performative chaos, and an illusion of permanence in social media relationships. People began asking uncomfortable questions. Were fans encouraging toxicity because it was entertaining? Were breakups only dramatic because the audience demanded spectacle? And who actually benefits when personal turmoil becomes episodic content? Bluefaces. Apparent comfort became symbolic. Comfort suggested choice. It implied that chaos wasn't inevitable. It was optional. That idea unsettled a lot of people because it reframed the past. If peace was possible now, then maybe the chaos before wasn't unavoidable. And that implication hit harder than any insult ever could. Meanwhile, Stunna Girl's presence continued to function like a mirror. She didn't speak, didn't defend, didn't attack. She existed, and that existence alone carried meaning. The absence of reaction created space for projection. People filled the silence with assumptions, and assumptions quickly turned into narratives. Some praised her restraint, others accused her of strategic timing. But everyone agreed on one thing. She changed the temperature of the room. As days passed, the scandal stopped trending at the top, but settled into the culture. References popped up in unrelated conversations. Jokes lingered. Catchphrases stuck. That's how you know an incident left a mark. It doesn't need constant attention anymore. It's been absorbed into collective memory. The long-term impact was subtle, but significant. Blueface no longer needed chaos to stay relevant. Karlissa has solidified her reputation as unfiltered and unmoved by public opinion. And Chrisean faced the hardest reality of all figuring out how to exist outside a narrative that once defined her visibility. That transition is never easy, especially when the audience is still deciding whether they want growth or drama. What made this chapter so unsettling was its lack of closure. There was no final statement, no emotional resolution, just a slow acceptance that the story had changed directions without asking permission. And that's the most realistic ending of all. Real life rarely provides neat conclusions. It just moves forward. But here's the part nobody should ignore. In this universe, calm never lasts forever. Silence is temporary, and comfort often precedes the next plot twist. This saga didn't end, it evolved. And if history has taught the internet anything, it's that peace in public narratives is often just the pause before the next explosion. Because when a story stops screaming and starts whispering, that's usually when you should lean in closer. Now, let's be real for a second. If this whole situation didn't make you pause, scroll back, and question everything you thought you knew, then you weren't really watching, because this wasn't just drama. This was a masterclass in silent moves and loud reactions. No announcements, no explanations, just actions that shook an entire fan base and rewired the narrative overnight. That's the kind of chaos that doesn't need receipts. It writes itself. So now it's your turn. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I already know opinions are split like a cracked phone screen. Was this growth, or was it calculated? Did the fans read too much into it, or was the message loud and disrespectful on purpose? Say it with your chest, because this comment section is where the real debates live. And don't play shy. Smash that like button like it owes you money. Punch subscribe like scandals pay rent here. And turn on notifications because these stories don't come with warnings. 1 minute it's silence. The next minute it's a full-blown internet meltdown. And you already know you don't want to miss the moment it pops off. This channel doesn't wait for press releases. We read the vibes, decode the silence, and catch the drama before it even realizes it's trending. Today, it's cooking clips and subtle shade. Tomorrow, it's leaked messages, surprise lives, and another plot twist nobody saw coming. Stay locked in, stay curious, and stay messy with us because around here, peace never lasts, and tea never gets cold. This is Vibe Crave where the drama doesn't end. It reloads,